All right, welcome everyone to our Soul Purpose series. I'm very excited to present our guest today. Ashley Turner is a yoga teacher. She is the founder of Yoga Psychology, a 300-hour teacher training program, and she is also recently a licensed psychotherapist. So welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Kassandra. It's so great to be here with you. I'm so honored.
Thanks so much. So before I start asking you about yoga psychology and all that great stuff, I want to congratulate you because a couple of weeks ago I saw on Instagram that you officially became a licensed marriage and family psychotherapist. So that's an amazing accomplishment. But what really struck me about the post is that you said that it was a 12-year journey to get there.
It was insane. It definitely was one of those things where I think if people had known, if I had known how much work it was going to be, I don't know that I would have actually taken it, but taken it on because it's been such a long journey. As at least in California is one of the hardest, it's the hardest state to get licensed as a psychotherapist. And, so you have to get 3,000 hours as an intern and then, take 2 massive exams. And that's after you've gone to school for 3 years and studied for 2 and then wrote a thesis. And so, yeah, but it was definitely worth it. And thank you so much.
What made you sign up for that in the first place? Because you were, I believe 12 years ago, you were already actively teaching yoga. So what made you want to become a psychotherapist and study?
Well, what happened for me is that I had been teaching yoga for several years. And first of all, when I had started teaching, I definitely was depressed and I didn't really realize it at the time. But I, was dealing with a lot of low self-esteem and body image issues. And I'd gone through a pretty intense time and in college. And then I found yoga shortly after, but I definitely was depressed. I was lonely. And yoga was the first thing that had been many years that I've been struggling with that. And yoga was the first thing that really started to heal that for me. So it happened from the inside out. It really was a process of discovery and healing. And then when I was practicing, I just became a calling that I wanted to start teaching because I knew that it was totally changing me. But then once I started teaching, again, after a couple of years, I saw people coming up to me and they were having their own breakthroughs on the mat and they were having their own aha moments or they were coming up to me and really asking me some deep questions or maybe about their relationship. And, a lot of stuff comes up for us on the mat. It is the physical body is a doorway into the mental, emotional body and vice versa. So, I really didn't feel like I had the tools or the understanding of how to help serve them to take their yoga off the mat. And I really also wanted to understand, how does yoga work? Like, how is it that I've been doing this practice? And it has made shifts in my personality traits. It has certainly elevated my mood. It has definitely healed my depression and given me a sense of belonging and a sense of connection to myself, to God, and to other people. So it just was sort of, again, a calling that I wanted to go back to school and understand from the Western psychological perspective. I think, I had been studying in the Eastern and Taoism and yoga meditation for many years, but I hadn't even taken a Psych 101 class. So I was like, how does the West look at the architecture of the psyche, how it lands in the body, and what we can do about it? I also had 2 people that, 2 colleagues that had gone back to school, 2 friends of mine that were yoga teachers that had gone back to school to get their master's in psychology. Hala Khoury, who now does a lot of work with trauma sensitive yoga. And then my dear friend and colleague, Danielle Stewart, who's also a licensed psychotherapist and a yoga teacher. And I saw in both of them, they had developed a whole other language. They had just a very sophisticated understanding and skill set. And so they really inspired me. And I basically just went to the same school that they did and just sort of jumped on the bandwagon, which is Pacifica Graduate Institute. near Santa Barbara. So that's a little bit of the nutshell.
Did you already have the idea of yoga psychology being something that you wanted to create when you were done and had graduated from this program, or did that come later on?
I definitely had the idea because I was really entrenched in yoga. I was completely devoted to it. It was my whole life. I was already teaching full time at the time, when I went back to school and to get my master's. And so I knew that I wanted to write my master's thesis on the integration of yoga and psychology. And everybody, all my thesis advisors, everybody was telling me like, that's a really big topic to take on in 120 pages, like yoga, the whole of yoga and the whole of psychology, and how do they meet? How do they intersect? How do they, enhance each other? But I kind of always buck against the system and just figure out ways to do what I want to do, for better or worse. So I wrote my master's thesis on this integration, and it was called The One Behind the Two, the integration of yoga and psychology. And, my thesis in general my hypothesis was that yoga and psychology really enhance each other. One is actually not better than the other. It's a very yogic notion that, we have like the Eastern or the Western perspective is not better than the other. Actually, they really serve each other. Where in yoga, what I would see is that, people would have these big breakthroughs on the mat or in their bodies, or maybe they were meditating a lot and kind of evolving consciousness in this way, but then they never dealt with big family of origin issues, or they weren't really communicating that effectively with their partners or their kids, and relational issues. So psychology gives us a lot of tools to enhance specifically communication and family of origin, trauma, of course, and on, really working with the architecture of the unconscious. And yoga really gets us into our bodies and addresses our spiritual nature, which traditionally Western psychology hasn't delved into the physical nature as much and the spiritual nature as much. There definitely are more and more schools, of course, of psychology that integrate spiritual psychology and Gestalt and somatic experiencing. And these things are starting to, expand. But traditional Western psychology was more of a mental processing. And so yoga in some ways is a more comprehensive, because there's so many different schools of yoga and ways of approaching, yoga is about approaching all the different layers of who we are, all the aspects of self. And so there's, you can do chanting and mantra yoga. Bhakti yoga is the yoga of the heart chakra. And it's known that chanting, ritual, prayer, coming together in ritual space really heals our heart center, and it heals our emotional body. Or if you're really mental and processing and analytical, then you have jnana yoga, which is the yoga of the philosophy and the yoga of studying and reading and discourse. So there's all different kinds of yoga that are really helpful to heal whatever aspect of self is out of balance. Mm-hmm.
So you have offered once, right? Like you ran your 300-hour yoga psychology training one time, I believe, and have those people graduated already, or are you still in the midst of going through this training?
I'm it's just like from the first the first Yoga Psyche Soul.
Yes. So you've already run this training one time. They graduated.
Yeah, we did it. So I developed then out of that thesis and out of then 10 years of working on both as a clinical psychotherapist and also as a yoga teacher. I then finally put together last year my first advanced teacher training, which is called Yoga Psyche Soul. And it's really focused on yoga psychology, looking at it through the angle of yoga psychology. We ran one last year. So it's 6 modules or 6 pillars of yoga psychology. And it's broken down. So if you wanted to get it and wanted to do it as a 300-hour advanced Yoga Alliance certified teacher training, you can do it. You can come down to Venice and you can do it live. And those 6 modules, then you show up for all 6 of those modules live. We also have an online component that we run, which makes it more accessible for people around the world, because it's, you know, it's challenging to travel and it's very expensive and all of that. So I wanted to offer as much as possible online. And the 6 modules, the first module is Foundations of Yoga Psychology and Shadow Work. So shadow work is a really big piece of what I do. And it's very yogic, you know, and we can talk about what shadow work is, but it's really doing your own inner investigation and your own personal work and really owning your shit, and just always looking at what our unconscious patterns are and behaviors and just naming them. And we learn how to turn that into our fuel, and it really propels us to the next level. So shadow work is a massive component. And there's definitely, what I see in the spiritual community, a tendency to spiritually bypass and not really do and own our humanity and just the weaknesses and challenges or personality traits, you know, blocks that we have. Yeah, exactly. And then that's the first. The second module is the chakras, applied psychology of the chakra system. Chakras are one of my beloved maps. I really feel like the chakra system is a cornerstone of yoga psychology, because it's a very clear map of what, you know, how our emotions and our developmental psychology lives in our bodies. Also how our family of origin, how we carry what's called ancestral wounds, and how we can work through those in a multitude of ways. Again, through all the different senses, through all the different aspects of yoga. So the chakra system is the second module. The third module is meditation, mindfulness, and neuroscience. And we really dive more deeply into the intricacies of teaching and practicing consistently meditation and mindfulness. And then the fourth is the science of sound. And so it's mantra, bhakti, and nada yoga, which I just mentioned, the chanting and mantra yoga. We even go into curating playlists and how, you know, the neuroscience of how music works, and so that you're really crafting a playlist that's going to help your students reach the aim that you're going for in your classes. And then the fifth is conscious relationships and sacred sexuality. So funny, every time I say one, I'm like, oh, it's like my favorite, but then the next, like you're not, the next one's your favorite too. So conscious relationships and sacred sexuality is one that I have a real passion for, obviously, as a marriage and family therapist. I feel like this was a big piece that was missing in the yoga world, where, you know, in a lot of ways, the yoga of relationship is widely considered the most challenging yoga. And most of us are triggered, you know, perhaps most commonly in particularly our romantic relationships, and then our family relationships as well. So really helping people with relational skills, also really helping teachers understand how they can bring this into their classes, and just some basic tools for that. So I'm really excited about that module. That was a huge hit last year. And then the last one, which I know, you know, you and I were just sort of talking about, is the business and leadership training, or productivity training and business training for yoga teachers, but for any soulful entrepreneur. It's really the yoga of business and the business of yoga, but how to understand what your dharma is, and what your passions are, and what your constitution is, and then creating a career around that, you know. So it really is from the inside out. So there's so many different ways that you can be a yoga teacher. Obviously, you're like such an incredible example of that. But for me, like, I love being on video like this, but I'm not the person that's going to be, you know, constantly filming little sequences. And then, as we were just talking, like just the editing and, you know, kind of makes my brain freeze. And so I don't understand all of it. So YouTube hasn't yet been my forte. Not that I'm not going to get there, but, you know, and I like to do a lot of online trainings, and I've, you know, launched several online trainings. It's just a slightly different medium. And it's really important, I think, that people give themselves permission to be who they are and create a business around it. And I see a huge hole in the marketplace, particularly for yoga teachers that are just simply not being trained how to be business people and entrepreneurs. And if you want to be successful and make a good living, you have to really think like a business strategist and look at what products in your product line are working, what's selling, what's successful, what's not. Keep adapting, keep pivoting, know how to promote your brand and know how to build a brand. And this doesn't have to be, overwhelming. It can be really fun. And so I'm really passionate about help. And, for me, it's like, let's bring in the yoga to it. Let's bring in the Dharma and the Swadharma and really align with people's natural constitution and then blow on those embers so they can catch flame.
Yeah, I was definitely interested in your module 6 because I love to talk to other teachers about business and about money and about how you're actually supposed to make a yoga teaching career something that is sustainable and not something that you do for 5 years and then you burn out because you realize you can't afford your rent and you're having a hard time. There are so many misconceptions I think that we have about what it's actually like to teach yoga. And I knew right away, I noticed right away that business was something that was lacking in my own training. It was not something that was talked about very much. And if it was talked about, it was talked about at a very superficial level, because what I noticed right away was that a lot of people, a lot of teachers, no matter how big and successful they were, still had like a huge scarcity mindset, and they did not want to share their tips and tricks and their information with the people they were teaching. And it bothered me. It really, really bothered me. So I said, so I just, did my own thing, went online, all that kind of stuff. And I really decided from day one, okay, if I ever get to call myself a successful yoga teacher, whatever that means to me, please, I hope that I'm not going to be that teacher who now hoards all the information and tries to compete with her peers, a rising tide lifts all boats. I really, truly do believe that there's enough space for everyone here. And the reason why we can carve out our own path and really trailblaze our own path is because we all have a unique mission. You were saying that you're online, I'm online, but we're online in such different ways.
Yeah.
Different audiences, utilizing different platforms and different technologies. There's plenty of room for everyone.
Totally.
So the reason I really resonated with you and your teachings and why I wanted to bring you on was because you were one of the first role models that I really saw in the yoga world, who was being very transparent and very open with the way that you were sharing information and really giving people a reality check of what it means to be a yoga teacher. And if you want to be successful, here's what you have to do in order to reach these goals that you set for yourself. And it was really refreshing, because I found that everywhere I looked, whenever I tried to get some information, it was like a closed door. So thank you for being one of those, the few people in the yoga world who are showing that you totally can help other people on their journey and still help yourself at the same time, right? It doesn't have to be an either or. It doesn't have to be me or you. It can be me and you working together and lifting each other up.
Yeah, I feel so passionate about that. I mean, I think that, I was really lucky in that one of my biggest mentors and best friends is Sean Korn, and she is so notoriously transparent and so generous. And I just always had that model of, I would go to her all the time and ask her questions about, hey, how did you negotiate this? Or how much are you making at that festival? How much does this conference pay you? How much do you charge for a weekend workshop? Okay. So number one, it helps me elevate and say, okay, if she's charging $10,000 a weekend, I can charge $10,000 a weekend. Maybe not today, but in 2 years I will, and if she's asking this much from Wanderlust or whatever conference, then I know the ballpark. So, and then helping me with negotiating tactics and strategies. And, this was way before the online, explosion, but she was so helpful with all of that. And I honestly don't know what I would have done without her.
Yeah.
And so, that was just always my way. And the other thing is, it comes down to this. I really believe that yoga is one of the greatest tools that we have as humanity to change our own lives and to change life on this planet.
Mm.
And I mean, not to be dramatic, but we are in a very precarious situation with our environment, with the planet, with our political environment. I mean, you know, you're in Canada, you're not in the United States, but
Okay, I feel it. I feel
we're
it.
dealing with a whole shit show here, you know? So I'm just
Oh,
going to
yeah.
name it. I don't mince words. And honestly, the world needs more yoga, and yoga is exploding. So if you look at the business strategies and statistics, the yoga world is exploding. The yoga world in the last 4 years, the number of people doing yoga, this is a study that Yoga Journal and Yoga Alliance co-sponsored together. It came out in 2016, just last year. They interviewed tens of thousands of people. In America, in the US alone, there's 60% more people doing yoga than there were 4 years ago. 4 years is nothing. It's like a flash in the bucket.
Yeah.
So the fact that, you know, there's that kind of expansion in this industry means there's an incredible opportunity. So again, you're like such a perfect example because it's so obvious. You can go and on your YouTube channel and so you're getting hundreds of thousands of, you know, views on each video. That's incredible. That's massive. So there's the proof that there's a lot of opportunity in the yoga world. The challenge is a lot of yoga teachers don't have business acumen, or they were certainly never taught that in a basic 200-hour teacher training. Maybe they got one afternoon of a little yoga, of a little business training. And there is a scarcity mentality, and it's time to really name it. You know, there really is a scarcity mentality. I see it, you know, all over. I've dealt with it myself. I mean, it's one of the reasons I'm the most passionate about breaking through, because we have to renegotiate our relationship to money and to wealth and to what it means. It's not about having, you know, it's not about all the dollars in the bank. It's like, what is real wealth for you? What is the bottom line? And, you know, again, for me, it really boils down to, I believe that yoga can change the world. I believe it is changing the world completely. And I believe that yoga teachers deserve to be paid really well for that. For that to happen, we all need to rise up together. As you said, rising tide lifts all boats. It's like the more we're in this dialogue, the more we're helping each other out, the more we're launching business trainings for yoga teachers, the better it is, because the more successful they're going to be, the more they're going to be teaching. Everybody's classes are going to be more full, the more skills we build. And so, you know, everybody wins.
Absolutely. What would you say is like the biggest pitfall you see for yoga teachers, whether they're recently graduated or people who've been teaching for 10 years? Like one that I found is definitely the scarcity mindset. People just get on this one-way track, or they believe that a yoga career looks like a very specific, narrow thing. And I feel like when you're so narrow, you don't see all the opportunities that are around you. But what have you seen personally?
Scarcity mentality definitely is massive. That is huge. It's, you know, it's something that I also think that, you know, I think that there's a way in which, again, this speaks to sort of just the constitution of maybe a typical yoga teacher. Is that we tend to be, most of us tend to be, and I'm speaking for myself, a little more right-brained, more in the body, more in the emotional realm, the spiritual realm, the creative realm, and not as linear, logistic, logical. And so, and then if we're, and I just know this was myself for the first 10 years that I was teaching yoga, you know, it's kind of like, it's very leisurely. And so it's easy to be very leisurely about, you know, your career, but then the truth is, if you're not taking your career seriously, it's like anything, we teach people how to treat us. And so if you're not showing up in a really professional way, then people aren't going to view you that way. And I think that in the mass perception of yoga teacher, there is this kind of hippy-dippy, flaky, you know, hanging out, like, you know, not crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. And I'm not advocating being overly regimented, but I'm advocating following through, being reliable, being professional, being skillful.
Yeah.
And if you're like that, you will get ahead. but I hear from people all the time, people that are in the yoga industry and people that are not in the yoga industry. Oh, yoga teachers are flakes. Oh, you guys are just like hanging around and doing your thing. And it's kind of unfortunate we're getting that bad rap. So we have to take it on ourselves and just take responsibility. And so a long time ago, at least 10 years ago, I got really clear, because also I live in LA. There's a lot of people that are creative entrepreneurs or actors or, I barely know anyone that has a 9-to-5 job. So all my friends would be like, hey, do you want to go to yoga at noon? Do you want to go to lunch? Let's go to yoga and then to lunch and then the Korean spa. And it's like on a Wednesday. Excuse me. And I got really clear that I work Monday through Friday. Yeah. And I pretty much work, 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday. I'm sitting here in my office and my computer, and I continually dial down my priorities to really build this business and this company. Yeah. And it paid off. It's paying off, And so I was very diligent about my boundaries. And still there's times like, yesterday I took a break and I did go meet someone for lunch, and it was a colleague that I really want to form a friendship with. And I really admire how she's doing work. And it was a great business meeting. It was personal too, because we're becoming friends, but it was really like we were breaking down our businesses. Like, how are you working? How do you manage this? And so, but even that, which was great, I would have preferred it to be in the evening. She has kids, so it's not really possible, but I don't like cutting out my day for 2 hours in the middle of the day.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. So, this is just the way I structure my business, and people work very differently. There are certainly times when I take Friday off, or I know my family's coming in a month, and so I'm going to take a couple days, and that is the freedom of working for yourself and having that privilege. So scarcity mentality is one. Being professional and treating your company like a business is number 2. Number 3 that I think is one of the biggest pitfalls that I see with yoga teachers is pretty universal, at least in the initial stages. And this is that, again, it's that creative right brain. People have so many ideas and they don't choose one. So they don't commit. They're a jack of all trades and a master of none. And so when I had my yoga psyche soul trainees here last year and we were doing the business module, every single one of the girls got up there and said, well, I don't really know what workshop I want to do because I do dancing and I'm really passionate about this, but I also want to do like a detox and lead people through that. And it's like, we're going to choose one. You're going to just build one for a year. We're going to build it because you have to build a funnel for a business so people can follow you and they know who you are. They know what you're about. I see people all the time are just throwing everything up on the wall and they have all these things going. Number one, your followers can't, your students, they can't figure out what is your thing.
Yeah.
And then you only have, especially in the digital age, it's a shortened attention span. And so if you give people too many choices, they won't make any choice.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's better to give them no choice and say, this is what I'm doing. I do this yoga cleanse, this yoga detox twice a year, Or I specialize in, trauma, informed yoga or yoga for anxiety or whatever it is, but choose one, build down that vertical, get that one really strong, and then you can add on another one. It's not that you can't do the other stuff, but you just can't do them all at the same time.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I'm always telling people, like, when you try to serve everyone, you serve no one, because people don't see themselves reflected in you. Like, why are you teaching Ashtanga, Iyengar, Yin, Hatha, Vinyasa, Power? Like, you don't have to do all of that.
Right.
But we feel like we have all this creative energy and all these great ideas, and we really, really, really want to be successful in whatever terms we believe. So we try to go everywhere in all directions, and then it doesn't work out and we're exhausted. So I definitely hear you there. And I think really good props to you, because I don't think I've ever heard someone use the term yoga in business so often as you have. And I love it, but I like it because not everyone sees their career as a yoga teacher as a business, and they don't treat it that way. Like, you called your offerings like products, and
Yeah.
that's what it is. And I get a lot of resistance sometimes when I introduce it that way, because there's this concept of like, wait a minute, I went to yoga because I didn't want to do the corporate agenda, you know? And then we're trying to introduce still some of those little principles, because at the end of the day, like, I know you don't want to have a corporate agenda, but you're going to have to put a roof over your head, right? So it's, I'm glad that it's becoming more and more acceptable to marry those two principles together, and to be able to show that it absolutely can be done in a very yogic, in a very high integrity and high value kind of way. It doesn't have to be like a used car salesman. It doesn't have to be pushy. It doesn't have to be icky. It can be genuine from the heart, you delivering value to the people that you know you're going to be able to serve best, you know, so that it really sticks and works with them.
Yeah.
You have a free training, I know, because I did module 1 this morning. You have a free little video series for yoga teachers, really to help them establish themselves in their careers. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, you know, I was working, again, what's interesting, it was really interesting to me, because I knew when I launched this training when I launched my yoga psychology training, that I definitely wanted to have a full module on the business of yoga, the yoga of business, leadership, etc. Then when I got into teaching this training last year, I realized even the need was even bigger than I thought. I simply asked everyone in the training, and these people had come from all around the world, from Sweden, from England, from Canada, from Australia. And I said, you know, okay, who in here is happy with the amount of money that you're making teaching yoga? And not one person raised their hand. And so, you know, that's really heartbreaking to me, honestly. So I realized even more how passionate I am about helping yoga teachers break through this block and really get some solid skills under their belts. So I ended up putting together this 3 video series, and the first one is, which you just did today. I talk about the Instagram effect, and I talk about the effect of the digital age in yoga, and some of the pitfalls of that and the challenges of that, as well as the massive opportunity. As we know, everything being online now, we can leverage so much. And if you just get some basic skills, you can leverage a lot and find, your target audience much easier than in the past. So it's amazing. We're so lucky to be living in this digital age. I also talk a lot about why I believe yoga is so powerful, and the effects of being in a live class together, in a workshop together, in a retreat, and how that really deeply heals the psyche. So the first training is the secret to teaching life-changing yoga classes, to really go from being a good teacher to being a great teacher. The second video training is how to teach sold-out yoga classes, and really how to add more value to your classes so your students keep coming back again and again. And then the third training is the 6 pillars to wow your students. And I was hired several years ago by a very high-end exclusive brand of hotels called the Montage Hotels. And they are family run. They have 5-star hotels, just a handful, in Laguna Beach, in Hawaii, in New York, and Deer Valley. And they hired me to come in because they saw this explosion in the yoga market. And they hired me to come in and launch their mind body yoga program. And in their whole corporate training, which I had to do their corporate training to be a part of their company, they talked all about, they're really known for their exquisite customer service, which you hear a lot in like 5-star hotels. So if you can imagine the type of customer service where you walk in the door and they know your name, somehow, some way, they already know your name, or, the person that comes to bring you, whatever, or sees you walking in the hallway knows your name. Like, they're going above and beyond. And so we were taught in the Montage training how to wow. Their whole ethos is about creating wow moments, that they want their clients and their guests to leave with these wow moments, these moments of of awe and astonishment at how amazing their experience was at the montage. So that's a high standard for customer satisfaction. And this wow moment really got me thinking. And so that last video, the third video, is how to create these wow moments and really add so much value to your students that they want to come back. They're coming back for more, and you really are changing lives. So I'm really excited about the training. Each of the videos is quite packed, and I worked really hard with my team and poured my heart into it the last couple of months. So yeah, it's just super exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't wait to do the rest of it. So you guys at home, if you are interested in taking this training, it is 100% free. So
free, totally free.
So there's really like no reason to do it. If you're a yoga teacher and anything that we've been talking about today kind of stirs something within you and you feel like these are some of the things that you've been having a hard time with, I highly recommend that you go and you sign up for Ashley's free training. So there's a link to it down in the description box. You can click and sign up that way. Otherwise, you can go to this link. It's bit.ly/growyogabiz. So I'll spell it out. It's bit.ly/grow, G-R-O-W, yoga, Y-O-G-A, biz, B-I-Z. And you'll be able to just sign up and start receiving the modules and the lessons one at a time. So, and I really feel like no matter how long you've been teaching yoga, like whether you're fresh out of a teacher training or you've been doing this for like a decade, I really think that at some point we all need some little refreshers and some tips, because I know that for me, I haven't been teaching for as long as Ashley. I've only been teaching for about 5 years, but I've felt how much it's changed over the last 5 years, right? And it's not slowing down. Like,
right.
There's always going to be more that you need to learn, but if you can get the foundation and the essential skills to learn how to adapt to those changing technologies and the changing waves really that are part of yoga and having a yoga career, it'll be that much easier for you to like roll with the waves and not like drown and be taken by the current. So I highly encourage you to do that. Ashley, before we wrap up, I'm really curious, just because you know, you're someone that I can look up to and other people can look up to and think like, oh, like that's a successful yoga teacher. You know, that's what a successful yoga teacher look like. And people might want to emulate that and follow into your career and like have that as a goal. But whenever people are like pretty big, I'm always curious as to like what that was like in day one, because you've been doing this for a while now. So, you know, just briefly, like what has your evolution been and how have you had to adapt? Because yoga today is not what it was 15 years ago. And I work with a lot of teachers who've been teaching for a decade or two, and they're having a hard time right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, part of what yoga is about being flexible, and that's just not physically flexible. That's also being malleable and adaptable and staying current, staying with what the evolution of humanity is, of life on this planet is. So for us right now, that means the digital age. And it doesn't mean that you have to, you know, aim to, you know, again, create a YouTube channel with hundreds of thousands of followers if that's not where your passion is. Right. But it does mean that it's important to, you know, learn from the online world and adapt and use the online world to your benefit to build your business. So in whatever way feels good. And there's so much help out there.
Yeah.
For me, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
I was going to ask you if you found it daunting personally when you had to like go online.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I keep yawning. I have this building behind me and it reflects the sunlight. And it's like the way that it always hits my eyes makes me yawn. It's so wild. But I do have to, you know, it is daunting. I mean, literally last night I was like, should I just delete my Instagram? I heard that Kendall Jenner just deleted her Instagram account because she's on it all the time. And I was like, maybe I should just delete my Instagram and I'll feel freed up, you know? I think it's just important to have healthy boundaries and know what works for you and what's good for your business. So it is important to be posting and be engaging with your audience because your audience is online. There are other places too, but they are online for sure. So, you know, maybe you just give yourself, you know, a boundary, like I'm going to make sure I post once a day, a really high quality post or a quote or something that's adding value. And it is daunting. And I think, you know, most business mentors that I've heard say, choose one or two social media platforms
Yeah.
that you really want to kill it on. You know, you don't have to do all of them. So obviously you're, again, such a great example of that, because YouTube is just like such a natural fit for you. And so,
Yeah.
you know, you don't, like, I never got on Snapchat. I never got on Periscope. I mean, I did, I'm on Periscope, but I think I did one Periscope, you know, and I was just like, and I do tweet, but it's mainly Instagram and Facebook. And then I'll post my videos on YouTube, but I don't spend a lot of time generating a big audience on there, although you're super inspiring me. And I think I'm going to hire you as a consultant to help me on YouTube. Yeah, totally. 100%. But, you know, so keep, like anything, you know, build your own healthy boundaries with it. And to answer your question, you know, when I first started out, I mean, I think I got some really good advice early on, which was from my first teacher, Brian Kest. And I started teaching at his power yoga studio in Santa Monica. And at the time, he said two things that really stuck out for me. One of them was that he has always only ever had a donation-based yoga studio. And so it's totally donation, and you can pay whatever you want. You know, it's suggested donation like $14. When I was teaching, it was suggested donation was $10, and most people paid $5 for the average donation. But he said, when you come in, so when I started teaching, I mean, I was on fire about yoga. I was obsessed with it. I couldn't not do it. So there was no time slots on the schedule available. Except I saw this one girl was teaching a 1:30 class, but she was teaching it like Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. So Wednesday and Thursday were open at 1:30. Not even like, you know, typically you want like alternate days, like Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So these were 2 days back to back, 1:30 in the afternoon. But the thing is, I was going to Yoga Works down the street, and their 1:30 class was full. They had 25 people in that class. So I thought to myself, okay, obviously there's a market for 1:30. It's the worst time on the schedule. You know, it's literally the worst time on the schedule. So, you know, but there's a market. People down the road are going to yoga at 1:30. It's LA. People go to yoga at 1:30. So I know I can do it. I just had this burning fire, this tenacity. Like, I know I can do it. If she's doing it down at Yoga Works, I can do it at Power Yoga. So I'm going to take these two classes and I'm going to build them. And I did. And I built it out into a whole yoga career. I started there. But the point is that, you know, at Power Yoga, at Brian Kest Power Yoga, it was donation. And so the way that it worked was we had to pay rent to the studio in order to teach the donation class.
Really?
So at the time, I was paying them $60 a class to go and teach. I had to pay to teach yoga. And Brian said to me, you know, the way that this works so well is that if you're not dead serious about teaching yoga, you're not going to last. But if you're serious about teaching, you're going to hustle. And you're going to build these classes. You're going to get people in there so that you make money. You get back your $60 and then you make more money on top of that. So within a couple of years, I mean, I was making hundreds of dollars a class, and it was cash. And no one was checking in. I was a box in the corner, and I would, you know, shovel all that cash into my bag at the end of the day. I built it out into teaching Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6:30 p.m. and every day, Monday through Friday, 1:30. And so I was teaching 8-10 classes a week and built them into really solid classes. So that's how I built my career. So two things he said to me, one of which was, if you're really serious about teaching, if you're really serious about teaching, you'll find a way to do it and you'll be successful at it. And he said, you know, that's one of the reasons that he kept it donation, because it automatically weeds out people that are half-assing. They're not going to last. They're not going to last 6 months if they have to pay to teach yoga. So that was a huge, I just sort of realizing as I'm telling the story right now, how big impact that had on me. Second thing he said was, at the time he lived up in Topanga. It's up in the hills in a little beautiful canyon. And then he would drive, you know, 30 minutes down to Santa Monica to teach. And he said, every day, I notice that if I have already practiced and done my yoga practice, there are more people in the room, inevitably. So it's just a law of energetics. The more you put into your own sadhana, into your own practice, the more people are going to show up, and you feel really authentic, and you feel, you're teaching from an overflow, and your well is filled up. So that's important physically, energetically, chronically, of course, and spiritually, that we're really teaching what we know, we're teaching, from our hearts and from what we're learning ourselves. And that's really the only way you can.
Yeah, I think it was on a previous webinar that you did a while ago where you said something like, I can tell when a teacher hasn't been keeping up with their own yoga practice because they're following along and doing the entire practice with the students. And now
I do that. I've done that, for sure.
Totally. Like when you said that,
you started adjusting,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And now I'm like, every time I notice that, I'm like, oh, maybe that teacher is not keeping up with their practice. But I notice it in myself as well, as like when I've been kind of neglecting my own self-care and my own practice, my teaching is definitely nowhere near as good. And I think really like what I'm getting from the answer that you said comes in hustle. Like if no one's going to give you an opportunity, if you want an actual career teaching yoga, you're going to have to create an opportunity where there was none before.
Exactly. And you've done that. And I've done that. No one was talking about yoga psychology. No one was talking about YouTube when you first started practicing yoga, You create your opportunities. And that's what yoga teaches us. It teaches us how to see the unseen and how to see the possibility in what's there. So that's why the free training that I have is called How to Grow Your Yoga Business with Heart and Hustle. Yes. And so it's really both. You're coming from a really soulful, spiritual place and a really deep intention and devoted place. And you're coming with moxie, you're coming with like, I can do this. I can create an opportunity. I can create a business out of this. And it's going to look the way that it's supposed to for you, because there are people who need your life experience, the experiences that you've had, the biggest challenges that you've had. That's where your teaching comes from. That's your gold.
Okay, one last question before we wrap up. I always ask everyone, like every guest that I bring on, because I love to read. Do you have any kind of book that you could recommend that you would say has changed your life and really helped support you in your career teaching yoga?
Well, this is kind of a hardcore book, but it's amazing. It's so funny because I have it right here. But it's called Invisible Warfare.
Awesome.
And it's by my teacher, Mona Miller. She is one of my greatest teachers. Unfortunately, she passed away several years ago. And she was a therapist and a spiritual teacher. And the crux of her work was teaching emotional processing and shadow work. And this book is so chock full of exercises and, written. I mean, it's incredible. She really gives you an understanding of how to work with the nature of your mind and your emotions. So this was a big part for me. And she actually taught many of us in the yoga world. It's interesting. She had like a really big imprint before she left so prematurely. But she, was Sean Corn's spiritual teacher, Suzanne Sterling, myself, Mia Togo at Yoga Works, my friend Christine Hassler, who's an incredible coach. We all studied extensively with Mona, and she really is all about empowerment. I have the chills right now, just talking about her. But along with this Invisible Warfare, and you can go to her website is probably the easiest place to get it, and that's Communication Arts Company. Communication Arts Company. You can just Google Mona Miller Invisible Warfare and it'll come up. But she also has a big workbook that goes with it. So it's going to help you. She actually talks about the 6 realms, which are directly related to the koshas, although she's not at all in the yoga philosophy, but it just, the way she breaks down the physical body, the energetic body, the emotional body, the mental body, and then the spiritual nature, and how to work with all of those different bodies. They're inseparable. So it's a great map. So that's one of my favorite ones. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Guys, if you want to get the book, I'll post the link down below in the description so you can go visit Mona's website or get the book for yourself. So Ashley, if people want to learn more about you, learn more about Yoga Psyche Soul, where can they find you? Website, social media?
Yeah, go to my website. Yeah, social media, I'm all over. It's Ashley Turner, the number 1, Ashley Turner 1 on Instagram and and on Facebook, Ashley Turner Yoga. My website is ashleyturner.co, ashleyturner.co. And you can also look on yoga-psychology.co. And the link for where the free training is really, it's like the best of the best right now. So it's really juicy. And leave comments, because I really want to hear from you guys. I want to get to know who you are. I want to connect. So leave me comments anywhere on social media, but definitely on the videos, on the free video course too.
Wonderful. Okay, so all those links will be posted below, guys. If you want to stay in touch with Ashley, I really encourage you to hop on her newsletter. I've been on her newsletter for years now because you always send the best stuff and it's really high quality value. So I highly suggest and encourage you to do that. Thank you, Ashley. This was awesome. This was everything I hoped for and more.
Yay, so exciting. So congratulations. I'm serious. I am going to hire you to consult me on YouTube, and maybe you guys will see me more on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so. I'm all about convincing other yoga teachers to go on YouTube. I swear, they must think that YouTube is paying me to convert people, because I'm always pushing and getting.
It's so great. So that's really your natural, Shakti is.
Yeah.
So I think I think you should do a course just on YouTube for yoga teachers. Keep it that niche.
Coming.
Yeah, YouTube for yoga teachers. It has a ring to it.
Yeah, totally. All right, well, thank you so very much for being here today. I really appreciate it, and thank you all to the viewers at home who watched this episode. Please leave us a comment. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. It really does help to support free yoga on the internet, which I think is something that we can all appreciate and be thankful for. So thank you for tuning in, guys. If you have any questions or feedback, leave it in a comment below, and I will see you guys later. Thank you, Ashley.
Yay. Thank you.